In this video, I'm going to show you how to create column charts. So you can see on the spreadsheet what we're working with is we have information from the New Century Investment Fund, and we're seeing that they are invested in 3 sectors: the information, services, and manufacturing. Within those sectors, these are the subsectors, and we're comparing New Century's return compared to the S&P 500. So let's go ahead, and the first step is to select our data, and we're going to include the column headings and the row headings, including any other columns that may have labels in them as well. Now, instead of using the quick analysis tool, this time we're going to go ahead and use the insert tab. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the insert tab from the top of the screen, and then we're going to go to the charts group. Now, with the charts group, you have recommended, and then you have a variety of different charts that you can choose from. Now, pivot chart, we'll do that later on when we do pivot tables. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on recommended charts, and you can see that we have 2 tabs: recommended charts based on the data that we have plotted and actually how we have it plotted. You can also go to all charts as well if you want to choose a line chart or something completely. Cancel out on this because I want to show you something else. Besides going to recommended charts, you can just click on the dialog box launcher for the charts group, and you're going to get the same thing as clicking on recommended charts. So we're going to go ahead and choose the recommended one, which is the clustered column. You can also choose any of these others as well. So you have the stacked column, you have the 100% stacked, and again, a lot of it's just based on how you have that data plotted. So we're going to go ahead and choose the clustered column and click OK. Now, I like just leaving this on the spreadsheet that I'm working on right now. We're not going to move it anywhere just yet, and we'll go ahead and work with some of our options at this point. So when creating this chart, keep in mind that we've got several chart elements, and I just want to go over this with you. You have chart titles, you have the vertical axis, you have the horizontal axis, and then you also have the legend. And then within the chart, in this situation, we have what we refer to as the plot area. And then in the plot area, we have 2 data series. We have the data series in blue, which represents New Century, and we have the data series in red, which represents the S&P 500 baseline. Within each data series, you have data points. So, for example, this one I just clicked on is the data point for the software within the S&P. This is another data point for the hardware within S&P. If I click on this blue one over here, I have to click twice. Once selects the data series, the second time selects the data point, which is just the number itself. This is for the healthcare for the New Century. And then to click off, just click anywhere in the chart area. So these are some of the chart elements that you'll be working with. It's important that you understand, let me just drag this to the right, that you understand what a data series is and a data point, especially when you're going beyond just a pie chart. So a data series is all the numbers that represent the same thing. So you can see that I clicked on the blue bar. It highlighted or selected all the blue bars, and then in my spreadsheet to the left you see that New Century numbers are selected. So that is the data series. If I click on the red bar, it selects all of the red bars, and now it's selecting or displaying the data series for the S&P. If I just want a data point, I click a second time on one of the bars, and note it just highlights, or you have the sizing handles around just that one data point, and that is representing the software for the S&P, which is this 3.49. That's going to be important when you want to start doing some editing or make some changes to the chart. And let me give you an example of one of the things that I would do. First of all, let's go ahead and just work with the chart title. We'll go ahead and make some changes here. So we'll do New Century Fund Comparison. Okay. Alright, so one of the things that I would do with a chart like this, let's say I want some numbers to show at the top. Keep in mind, if I click one time, I select the data series, so I have all of the S&P highlighted. If I click a second time, I am just focusing on the data point. So if I wanted to display the value above this one, remember I said in the previous video, right-clicking. So if I right-click, at this point I can add what they call a data label. And I'm just going to go ahead from my shortcut menu, choose Add Data Label, and click Add Data Label. And notice it's just adding the data label for that one point, that one data point. Alright. Now I can click on that one data label, and I can press the delete key to get rid of it. So that's a quick way to get rid of it. If I click again, I'm selecting the data series. If I click a second time, I'm selecting the data point. Let me click off. We'll do it one more time. Click once is data series. Click a second time is the data point. All right. Let's do this with the blue, with the New Century. Click once for the data series, but this time I'm going to go ahead and right click and choose Add Data Labels, and then choose Add Data Labels from the submenu. And notice all of the data points have their values displayed. That's because I didn't click a second time. I clicked one time to select the data series, and then any of my selections from menus that I choose will affect the data series. And I just did a Control-Z to undo, which is no different than coming up to the Quick Access toolbar and choosing the Undo button. Okay? So again, one click, data series, second click, data point. All right, let's go ahead and let's work a little bit with the title. One of the things you might want to do is you might want to enhance the title. You can select the text and you can choose the little mini formatting menu here if you want to make some changes. So I'll go ahead here by changing the color of the text. I can make it bold. I can change the typeface. I can change the font size. Right, so you can actually enhance the appearance of any of the text as well. This is no different than coming to the Home tab and choosing some of these options in the font group also. And again, you can also, when you right click and you get the shortcut menu, you can go to Format Chart Title, and it's just going to bring up the Format Chart Title or the format pane on the right hand side. And at this point you can make some changes. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do some of the formatting. So you'll go through a lot of different ways to do that from the book. The second thing I had shown you is how to do the data labels. I am going to click twice, so one time to select the S&P 500 and a second time to select the data point. Now, something that I had shown you was to do the right click. You can also, when you go to add data label, I like this one. This is a new feature, add data callout. And the cool thing about the data callout is twofold. One, it's going to give you an actual callout, which is going to have the little pointy line, but it's also going to provide you with what that number represents, in this case, services financial. So it's indicating that it's in the services group and the subgroup financial. So that's a real neat feature, and you can do a lot of the resizing. It's kind of hard to grab. See if we can move that baby around a little bit. There we go. All right. So that's kind of nice that you can move that. You can do these call outs as well. And again, if you right click, you can see if you have some options to do some formatting. Now in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do a little fill here. I'm going to go ahead and do a light color fill and see what that looks like. That looks pretty neat. I'm going to also do a right click, because notice it's also giving me some of the buttons as well up here at the top. And let's see if it allows me to change the shape. So if you go to the shortcut menus, change data label shape. Let's see if we can change the data labels. And that's just going to bring open the format pane where we can make our selection there as well. Let me go ahead and close this out. So keep in mind that, and I'm a right clicker, seems like when you right click you get a lot of choices just at the tip of your fingers at this point. And then also, let's see if we, let me close this out. If we click inside there and get our I-beam, we can highlight it and we can enhance that text a little bit more, make it bold. If we want to increase the font size, we can do that as well. If we want to change the text color, we can do that also. Let me change it back to black. So that's a neat way to enhance the data that you're plotting, and also depending on what you're discussing in your presentation, in your meeting, what you want to have stand out as part of your discussion also. So these become very, very cool features to incorporate in your chart. Now also something you can do is, if you, again, I am such a right clicker, but if you right click and choose Format Chart Area, it's going to pull up the format pane on the right hand side. So if you want to add some fill color to it, you can add some fill color. If you don't like that color, you can come down to the bucket and you can choose a different color. It's all up to you. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. I am, again, when I right click, I know I'm going to get either something from the shortcut menu here, or it's going to open up the format pane on the right hand side. And it's a matter of just double checking that this says what feature you're working on, and then at this point you've got these collapse and expand buttons that you can go ahead and make some of the choices from at that point in time. So that's your chart area. Now, something else that you might want to do is you might want to mess with the vertical axis here, and note when I highlighted it, or not highlighted, but click on it, it puts the sizing handles around it. Again, if you're not into where do I go to make the changes, it's real easy. You can right click and choose it down at the bottom, or here's another thing you can do, double click, and when you double click, you know you're going to get the format pane on the right hand side, and you're going to get options relating to that particular chart element. So I like approaching it this way. I know your book takes you through these steps, but again, if you just double click on that chart element, you're going to get this format pane on the right hand side. Now, something you might want to do, you might want to change some of the spacing here. If you notice that we are going in increments of 5, so it's going up to 0.25, and what we can do is we can change it and make it 0.10 and have it do this in tenths. You can see that it changed to the side. Alright, now you can also come down where it says display units. You have none. Maybe we want to display in thousands. We can have the word thousands on the left hand side. We'll go ahead and choose none at that point, since this is basing it on percentage right now. You can also work with tick marks as well, and tick marks is just going to be the differences between each of the marks on the vertical line there. So major, you see on this one, I think we're going to leave it alone at this point, and minor. So these are some of the changes you can work with and you can mess around with. We can change this maximum to a 2.5. Okay, and see it's going to change it right back for us. So we'll change that mine. And we'll leave it alone. Looks good. Looks fine. So anyway, a lot of things you can play with on there. We can go to the number down here at the bottom. And if we don't want 2 decimal places, we can take that off. Make it, actually I think we just leave it off and it'll be fine. Then we've got percentage. Yeah, we're going to put a 0 in there. Okay, there you go. So if you want to get rid of the zeros, you can get rid of that also. So again, this is a lot of different things you can do, and depending on how it's displayed, you can also change that formatting as well. And we can mess around with it. If we want it currency, we can do currency. Of course, it doesn't make sense based on how we have it plotted. So we'll go back to percentage at that point. So there's a lot of different things you can do here with that axis. So these are the axis options. And again, tick marks is going to be pretty much the basically the height there with the grid lines on how far apart they're going to be. And I don't think we've got any showing for this one, so we'll just leave that alone right now. And then labels next to the axis, we can do low, high. It'll be next to the axis on that. So this is a fun thing to play with. So anyway, those are your options there. And then text options, text fill. If you've got any text to fill in there, you can use that also. Okay, so that will be the access point there on the left. And then down here at the bottom, this is your vertical, or excuse me, your horizontal axis. And this one has a lot because we had 2 columns of labels in there, so you may not have a lot of choices at this point. You can do some rotating of it as well. We'll just leave it as is because it makes sense considering the amount of data that we have going on there. Let me go ahead and close that out. All right, so that's dealing with columns and dealing with some of the features that you have if you're going to work with your axis, whether it's the vertical or whether it's the horizontal. Again, this is where you will make those changes. And I think just a quick click will take care of it for you. So if I double click, let me get back over here. If I double click, it'll always bring up the format pane on the right hand side, but it'll also go to that specific chart element and any of the options that you can change at that point. So just keep that in mind when you're working with charts and when you're making those changes also. And we talked about the data markers as well. So that's a feature I think is pretty cool, especially having the call-outs, which I don't recall that was 2010. So that's a really nice feature to have with the 2013. Now also with the option here on the data series, if you go to this last option where you have Let me close this out just for a minute. The series options, this is where you can also change with some of the gaps between the columns. So you can increase it and decrease it. And I'm not sure if we're going to see much of a difference with this one. Oh, there we go. So we can make those bars a little wider, or we can make them a little narrower. It's up to you. And then you can also determine if any type of overlap, what the percentages on those series overlaps that you want to have. Alright, so they can be closer together, so you can see where it's close together here, or you can have them a little bit apart. Alright, I think I like it better the way it was at 27. Let me move it back to 27. You can type it in there as well. So those are also nice little features. So you can make them little skinny columns, or make them little tubby columns. It's all up to you. Alright, so let me go ahead and close it out. So you'll be covering how to deal with column widths as you go through working with the various chart elements. And again, we did go over the vertical axis and the horizontal axis as well. Adding grid lines to this one, and actually if we go to the chart element and go to grid lines, sometimes it's easy just to do it from here. You'll see that you have primary major vertical, primary minor vertical. The lines that you see right down here in between, they're kind of faint. So if we do primary vertical major, you can see that now you have them going from top to bottom. Now the reason why they call them major and minor, it's actually how wide they are. So let me turn off the primary major vertical and turn on the primary minor vertical, and it's tough to see because it's very faint, but you can see the lines are closer together. Let me turn off the primary major. We'll get rid of those grid lines, and I'll turn on primary minor. And again, very faint, but you can see the lines going horizontal, but they're closer together. So a lot of that also depends on the data that you're plotting, and if you need those to be closer to the spacing that you have on your vertical axis, and this is also part of the tick marks, then you may want to make some changes as well. So I'm going to go ahead and keep on the major, or turn on the major horizontal and major vertical, and we'll leave it at that. So that's part of the chart elements, and sometimes it's easier to get to some of those chart elements just by going to the chart elements button and then choosing it from here as well. So it's all up to you at that point. Now the last thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you how to move this chart from one spreadsheet to another, and also how to make it a chart sheet. So let's do the chart sheet first. Once you get the chart the way you want it, make sure it's selected. If you go up to the Design tab, on the right hand side you'll see a button that says Move Chart, and if we also right click on the chart, we'll see the option to move chart. So we can go either way to move the chart, but the chart needs to be selected. You click on Move Chart, and you can either move it to a new sheet, and then you can name that sheet, or you can move it as an object inside one of the spreadsheets. So let's go ahead and let's make it a new chart sheet. And I'll go ahead and click OK. Now the one thing about making it its own, putting it on its own sheet, it's going to make it a bigger chart as well. So we'll let it do its job here. If it doesn't freeze up and it looks like it's frozen. There we go. Alright, fingers crossed on that one. So it's going to make it its own chart sheet. And you can see it says chart 1 down here, so I can rename it. So when you're doing a presentation, sometimes having the chart embedded with the data and then also making it a separate chart sheet may be something doable. It all depends on how you're setting up your presentation. So let me go ahead and right click on it, and you can see now we can make some of the changes here as well. So you can make them here, or you can make them before you move. It's completely up to you. Now when you do it after, you might have to make some changes to the height of some things and move them around. So again, if you know you're going to do a chart sheet, you might want to put it on a chart sheet first and then enhance the chart. Otherwise, enhance it once you create it at that point. So I'll go ahead and move it back as an object. I'll put it on the summary sheet. Okay, and there we go. Oh, I'm dragging around on the wrong stuff. Let me click and drag. Now, at this point, I'm going to have to make some changes, obviously, because it looks like we've gotten... There we go. All right. Now, what I can do at this point, you can see I've got a couple of other charts on here. I can just go ahead, click and drag, and move it around where I want it. If I have it on the wrong sheet, what I can do, I can go ahead and just right-click and choose Cut. go to the correct sheet that I want to place it on, right click and choose paste. And you can see where you have some of the paste options here. I'm going to go ahead and do the one for the image and then move it around. So you can do the cut and paste, and again choose any method you want on the cut and paste, whether it's Control X for cut, Control V for paste, or if you're a right clicker, it's up to you. And I'm just holding the Control key, moving it around, and actually I'm sorry, the Alt key. There we go. And just resizing it. So again, it's up to you where you want to place it at that point, but make sure that move is the last thing you do if you're going to embed it within another sheet. If you're going to make it its own chart sheet, then you might want to do the enhancements once you move it as a chart sheet. So have fun with this one.